The red alert sirens screamed through the jungle base. Flashing lights lit the thick green trees outside as soldiers shouted in panic. Laser shots zipped through the air like deadly fireflies. Everyone was running for cover, ducking behind walls, crates, and trees. But one human ran straight into the chaos. His name was Jace, a young soldier from Earth. Newly assigned to this alien outpost, he had never seen real combat before. But when he heard the warning that an alien diplomat's daughter was under attack, he didn't think, he just moved. Through smoke and panic, he saw her. She stood in the open like a frozen statue, her silver skin glowing under the red lights, long hair like flowing ink, eyes wide with fear. An alien girl, no older than him. Unarmed, unprotected, and right in the path of the enemy. 3 masked attackers raised their laser rifles, aiming straight at her. Jace's body moved before his mind could catch up. He shouted, "Get down!" But she didn't move, so he did the only thing he could. He jumped in front of her, arms spread wide. The laser blasts hit his chest with burning force. Pain shot through his body like fire. His knees gave out, and the world started spinning. He fell to the ground, breathing hard. Everything was blurry. He saw the alien girl drop beside him, her face close to his, eyes full of shock, and something else. "Why?" he whispered. "Didn't you run?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached out with her hand and pressed it to his chest. Right over the wound, her hand glowed softly, and a strange warmth filled his body. She whispered a word he didn't understand, something ancient, something powerful. Time seemed to slow down. The screams and gunfire faded like distant echoes. He could see her face clearly now, not just beautiful, but something more. Mysterious, almost glowing from within. He blinked, trying to stay awake. But his vision faded, and everything went dark. Jace woke up to silence. No gunfire, no alarms. Only soft humming, like music from the stars. He lay on a soft bed made of glowing moss. Under a ceiling of vines that pulsed with gentle light, the pain in his chest was gone. In fact, he felt stronger. "Good, you're awake," said a soft voice. He turned and saw Hearth, the same alien girl, sitting nearby, watching him. Her face was calm now, but her eyes still held that mysterious glow. "You saved me," she said quietly. Jace tried to sit up, his body still weak but healing fast. "Who are you?" he asked. "Where am I?" "My name is Lyra," she said, "and you're in a hidden chamber deep under the base." She stood and walked to him, holding a small bowl of glowing blue water. "You shouldn't be alive," she said. "Those blasts were meant to kill." "Then?" "How?" Jace asked, confused. "I used something forbidden," she replied. "Old technology from my ancestors, something no one is supposed to use. But I had to," she added softly. "You risked your life for me." Jace took the water and drank. It tasted like sweet rain and made his head feel clear. "What now?" he asked. "Are we safe?" She shook her head. "No, we're not. The ones who attacked us weren't outsiders," she whispered. "They were from my own people. Someone wants me dead." Jace stared at her in disbelief. "Why?" he asked. "Because I know." "Things," she said. "Things I shouldn't know." Suddenly, a noise echoed above them. Heavy footsteps and metal scraping. Lyra's eyes widened. "They found us," she said. "We have to move." She helped Jace to his feet, even though he still felt weak. Something inside him had changed. He could see details sharper, hear sounds clearer. Almost like he was part of something greater now, as they rushed through a narrow tunnel lit by glowing roots. Jace asked, "Why did you help me?" She looked at him as they ran. "You jumped in front of me," she said. "No one has ever done that for me before." Just then, a voice echoed through the tunnel behind them. "Turn over the human girl, and we'll spare you." It was deep and cold. Lyra didn't even slow down. "They're lying," she whispered. "They'll kill us both." She grabbed his hand, and together they disappeared into the shadows, running towards something unknown, but one thing was clear. Whatever had just begun. It was bigger than both of them, and Jace had no idea what he had gotten himself into. Jace was breathing, but it didn't feel like normal breathing. Each breath felt rich, almost electric, as if the air itself had changed. He opened his eyes slowly, expecting pain, maybe death, but instead he felt alive, more than alive, above him. Strange glowing leaves swayed gently, even though there was no wind. The walls were smooth stone, covered in soft moss that shimmered with soft blue light. He wasn't in any hospital, and this wasn't a base, wherever he was. It felt ancient, secret, and alive. "You're not supposed to wake this fast," said a voice near him. He turned his head, and there she was again, Lyra, sitting cross-legged beside him, her eyes calm but watching him carefully. She looked different now, not scared, not panicked, just focused. "I thought I died," Jace said, his voice dry and rough. "You did," she answered quietly, "but I pulled you back." Her hand hovered over his chest for a moment, as if she could still feel the wounds he took for her. Jace sat up slowly, surprised that his muscles obeyed. His uniform was torn, but his body underneath felt healed, maybe even stronger. "How did you do it?" he asked. Lyra hesitated, then looked toward the carved symbols glowing faintly on the stone wall behind her. "I used something my people fear," she whispered. "Old technology, left by the ancients. It can heal, but it changes things. You and I were not exactly the same as we were before." Jace frowned, his instincts telling him that she wasn't lying. He looked down at his hands and flexed his fingers. They felt sharper, quicker, like his reactions had jumped ahead of his thoughts. Even the dim light around him seemed clearer than before he could say anything. The ground gave a small shake, just for a second. Then the sound of boots echoed down the stone tunnel leading to the chamber. Jace tensed, but Lyra already stood, moving silently toward the passage. "They found us too fast," she said, more to herself than to him. "They must be tracking you now." He stood as well, the shaking in his legs fading quickly. "You said you healed me using ancient tech," he said. "Does that mean I'm some kind of beacon now?" Lyra nodded. "Probably, yes." She placed her palm on the stone wall. And suddenly a hidden passage opened with a soft hum. "We have to move again," she said. "Follow me and stay quiet." Jace followed her into the darkness, the stone closing behind them with a low sigh. They walked in silence for a while, the tunnel lit only by faint pulses of light running through the walls like veins. He noticed something strange. He could almost feel the tunnel, as if it were speaking in a language without words. Every stone, every turn felt familiar, as if he'd been there long ago. Lyra kept glancing at him, her expression unreadable. Finally, she spoke. "You're feeling it, aren't you?" Jace nodded slowly. "It's like the walls are alive, like they're guiding me." She didn't look surprised. "That shouldn't be possible," she said softly. "Only the descendants of the royal line are connected to this place." Jace stopped walking. "I'm human," he said, "from Earth, remember?" Lyra stared at him, then whispered, "Maybe you're more than that now." They reached a small opening, a platform that looked over a wide underground chamber below them. Glowing roots crisscrossed a great pool of still water, and in the center stood a small pedestal. Jace felt a pull toward it. Like gravity was stronger down there. "That's where I brought you after the blasts," Lyra said. "The pedestal chose you." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Chose me?" "Yes," she said. "It didn't respond to me, but the moment I laid you on it, it lit up blue." Suddenly, a voice echoed faintly in the chamber below. It was not human, not alien, not even machine. It was something older, deeper, a whisper. Without sound, a message without words. Jace froze, his heart pounding. He could understand it not with his mind, but with something else, something inside him. "It's calling you again," Lyra whispered. "It wants something." But before they could move, a soft crack came from behind them. Both turned sharply there. In the tunnel they had just left stood a figure, tall, armored, with glowing eyes and a laser rifle aimed at Jace's head. "Hand over the human," said the cold voice. Now Lyra stepped in front of him without thinking, her voice steady. "You'll have to go through me first." The figure paused, as if surprised. "You've changed, girl. It said you used the forbidden tech, didn't you?" "You know what that means?" Lyra didn't move. "I know exactly what it means," she said quietly. "It means we're not afraid anymore." The enemy raised the rifle, but before he could fire, the chamber around them began to pulse. With bright blue light, Jace felt energy rise from the stones, the air thick with power. He didn't know what was about to happen, but he knew this: he was done running. Something inside him had awakened, and it was ready. The rifle's energy core began to glow, ready to fire, but the ground responded first. A deep rumble echoed from beneath their feet, and the walls of the ancient chamber lit up in flowing blue lines like living veins. The enemy hesitated for half a second, but it was enough. Jace stepped forward, hand outstretched, not sure what he was doing, but trusting the pull in his chest. Energy leaped from the stone floor and surged through his arm like lightning made of memory. A wave of force exploded from his hand, slamming into the attacker and throwing him back into the tunnel like a rag doll. The silence afterward was deafening. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. Jace looked down at his palm, still glowing. Faintly, his chest rising and falling quickly. "I didn't mean to do that," he whispered. Lyra stared at him with wide eyes, her mouth slightly open. "You didn't just use the power," she said slowly. "You spoke to it." He frowned. Confused? "No, I didn't say anything. You didn't have to," she replied, stepping closer. "It responded to you like you were one of its own." Jace didn't know what that meant, but there was no time to ask. More footsteps echoed in the distance, this time heavier, more organized. "They're coming in force," Lyra said. "We have to reach the sky pillar." He followed her down into the chamber, the glowing roots shifting to make a path for them. Every step Jace took felt like he was walking into a memory he'd never lived. The ancient pedestal still stood at the center of the chamber, humming softly, and when he touched it, images flooded his mind again, worlds he had never seen, voices, not his own, battles fought in skies of fire and oceans of stars. It was overwhelming, but it didn't hurt. He felt connected, as if the galaxy itself was trying to explain something he'd forgotten long ago. Lyra pulled him back gently, her voice shaking. "Whatever is happening to you, it's not by chance. You were brought here for a reason." Before Jace could respond, the walls behind them trembled again. From the far tunnel emerged a group of heavily armed aliens in dark armor, and leading them was someone Jace didn't expect. Another version of Lyra, or rather, someone who looked like her, but colder, crueler. Her eyes glowed red instead of blue, her movements sharp and mechanical. "That's my cousin," Lyra said bitterly. She was supposed to protect the old ways, but she chose control over truth. The cousin raised her voice, smooth and cutting. "Step away from the human. Lyra, you don't know what he really is." Jace tensed, his body responding before he even made a decision. The energy inside him rose again, but this time it felt different, dangrier, sharper. "What am I?" he shouted back. "Why do you want me?" The cousin smirked. "Because you're the key," she said, "to something very old and very dangerous." Jace looked at Lyra, who shook her head slowly. "She's twisting the truth," she said. "The ancients never wanted war. They wanted peace." The air crackled between both sides. like the chamber itself didn't want violence inside its walls. Then, without warning, the cousin gave the command, "Take them." Lasers filled the air. But the chamber reacted faster than any weapon. The glowing roots rose like vines and wrapped around the enemy soldiers, pulling them off their feet. Jace and Lyra ran, using the distraction to slip into a narrow passage that opened behind the pedestal. As they moved deeper, the glow around them began to change. Color blue turned to silver. Silver to gold. Jace's head pounded with more visions. Faster now, harder to hold back. He saw a tall figure in armor, with eyes like stars, speaking words in a forgotten tongue. Then he saw himself, standing on a battlefield that hadn't happened. Yet when the vision ended, he was on his knees, gasping for breath. Lyra knelt beside him, holding his face gently. "You're remembering things that were hidden," she said. "The vault is waking you up." Jace looked up slowly, still breathing hard. "What vault?" She pointed ahead, and the passage opened into a massive underground dome made of glass and crystal. At its center floated a sphere of light surrounded by old weapons, scrolls, and machines beyond understanding. Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper. "This is the vault," she said, "and we're not supposed to be here." Before Jace could step forward, the voice returned. Not from outside, not even from inside his ears, but inside his mind. "Choose the word" echoed through every bone in his body. He didn't understand the choice, but something told him that whatever came next would decide everything. And this time, there was no turning back. The moment Jace stepped into the vault, the air around him became heavy. Not like weight, but like memory, like time itself slowed. To watch him, Lyra followed close behind, her breath held, as if even the smallest sound could wake something ancient. The sphere of light at the center pulsed softly, waiting. The weapons and scrolls floating around it did not move with gravity. They moved with purpose. Jace walked toward it, each step harder than the last, not because of pain, but because something inside him resisted, as if part of him didn't want to know what waited there. Lyra's voice reached him in a whisper. Only a few ever touched the vault and lived, but none of them were human. Jace didn't answer. His eyes locked on the orb. When his hand reached it, the light surged. Not in rejection, but in welcome. The vault opened, not with sound, but with silence that roared inside their bones. Images spilled into his mind, thousands. At once, he saw Earth, not as it was, but as it had been. Not a young planet, but an old one. One that had once been home to those who looked nothing like humans, yet everything like him. He gasped and fell to his knees. Clutching his head, Lyra knelt beside him, holding his shoulders. "What did you see?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jace looked at her, eyes glowing faint blue now. Not from the vault, but from something deeper. "My people didn't come from Earth," he whispered. "We returned to it." The vault shimmered again, now releasing small cubes of crystal. They floated to Jace and hovered around his body like tiny stars orbiting a sun. Each one held knowledge, not just of war, but of choice, of betrayal, of love. One cube glowed brighter than the rest, then broke open. Inside was a message. Not in words, but in feelings. A warning. Lyra's expression darkened as she touched it. They knew this would happen. She said that the bloodlines would mix, that a hybrid would rise. Someone part human, part us. Jace stood, breathing deeply, his body feeling different again, stronger, heavier, like the vault had filled the empty places inside him. But before he could speak, the vault darkened. Something was coming. Not soldiers, not traitors, but something older, something buried. The walls of the dome shivered, and a low hum began to grow. Lyra looked toward the entrance, fear rising in her eyes. "No one has entered the vault in 1,000 years, she said, "but now." Something else has woken up from the shadows at the far end of the chamber. A shape emerged, not metal, not flesh, but both. A guardian, tall and cold. Its body forged from living crystal and armor made of starlight. Its voice rang through the chamber without sound. Identify. Jace stepped forward, unsure what to say. But the vault answered for him. A voice from the orb whispered his name, not the name he knew, but one older, forgotten, and the guardian paused, confirmed. It said, heir of the first flame. Lyra gasped, eyes wide. That name. That was only a myth. The guardian lowered its weapon. You have come early, it said. The war is not yet upon us, but it stirs. Jace raised his voice. What war? The guardian's light dimmed. A war that ended before it began. It answered, and begins again when forgotten blood remembers itself. Jace's hands curled into fists. Then help us stop it. But the guardian shook its massive head. I do not interfere, it said. I only awaken what sleeps, then, without a sound. The guardian turned and faded into the wall behind it, vanishing like smoke under moonlight. The vault's light dimmed, but the crystal stayed. Jace looked at Lyra, his voice calm but steady. We're not just running anymore, he said. We're going to finish what they started. Lyra nodded slowly, her hand finding his. We have to reach the sky pillar, she said. It's the only place where the signal can be sent. What? Signal. He asked to gather those who still remember, she replied, and to warn those who forgot. Behind them, the vault sealed itself silently, as if it had never opened. But the mark it left on Jace would never fade as they climbed the tunnel. Out, Jace felt the ground shake again, this time stronger. The war had not begun. But the galaxy had opened its eyes, and nothing would be the same again. Asterisk. The rain wasn't supposed to fall on this planet. Not here. Not in this dry region where dust ruled and clouds never lingered. But as Jace and Lyra stepped out of the mountain chamber, the sky above them wept with slow silver drops, each raindrop that touched Jace's skin sent a strange warmth into his bones. Alice. Like the planet itself had recognized Hammond was crying because it knew what was coming. They walked in silence, the air heavy with the weight of what had just happened. The vault had shown them a future filled with fire, a past full of lies, and a present waiting to break. Neither of them had all the answers, but one thing was certain, they couldn't go back. Their journey led them through an old pathway once used by explorers. Long before war turned beauty into ruins, the stones beneath their feet lit up faintly. With each step Jace took, not because of his boots, but because of him. The vault had marked him, and now the planet couldn't ignore it. Lyra glanced at him, her voice quiet but curious. Do you feel different? Jace nodded. I feel like I'm not just me anymore. Like I'm carrying something I don't understand. She looked away then, her expression unreadable. I used to dream about touching the vault, she said. But I was always told it would destroy me. And now I'm walking beside the one who woke it. As the path narrowed between jagged rocks, a strange sound stopped them both, a soft clicking, like claws scraping stone. Followed by a low growl that didn't sound natural. Jace raised his hand to signal Lyra to stop, and she froze. Something moved just ahead, hiding behind a wall of mist that hadn't been there moments ago. Then it stepped out, and neither of them spoke. A creature, tall and twisted, its skin metallic yet breathing. Its eyes were not eyes, they were dark voids that reflected nothing. It didn't look alive, and it didn't look dead either. It looked wrong. Lyra whispered. A hollow. Jace tensed. What's a hollow? Her reply was filled with fear. A creation from the last war made from the bodies of the fallen, filled with corrupted energy. Forgotten by time, they guard nothing, serve no one, and destroy everything that remembers the hollow. Cocked its head, then leaped forward with impossible speed. Jace reacted before thinking. a burst of light exploding from his arm. It slammed into the creature and sent it flying into the rocks, but it rose again like it felt no pain. "Run," Lyra said, but Jace stood firm. "No," he said, "if this thing is here, more will follow. I have to stop it." She reached for him, her fingers trembling. "You don't know what it can do." "Neither do I," he said calmly. "But I'm not letting it chase us down the path." The hollow rushed again. Faster this time, Jace closed his eyes, reached inside himself, and let the energy from the vault rise. He felt it surge not like fire, but like light made of truth. When he opened his eyes, they were glowing blue. He moved like he had trained. For years, even though he never had. Each step precise, each dodge effortless. The hollow struck, but Jace countered, his hand glowing as he touched its chest. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the creature froze, shivered, and began to crack. Its metal skin peeled back, and from inside came a scream without sound. The hollow collapsed into dust that scattered into the rain. Jace stood breathing hard, the glow fading from his hands. Lyra approached slowly, her voice shaking. "How did you do that?" He didn't answer right away. "I didn't fight it," he said. Smai reminded it what it used to be. She didn't speak for a long time after that. The rain continued to fall. Soft and steady, they moved again, faster now. Their goal clear, they had to reach the sky pillar before nightfall, because if one hollow had woken, the rest wouldn't be far behind. And with every step Jace took, the feeling inside him grew stronger. A quiet voice he could almost hear, saying again and again, "You were not chosen by chance." The sky wasn't just dark, it was watching above the silent cliffs. The clouds twisted like they were alive, not in a natural way, but like something ancient was stirring behind them. Something big and buried and angry. Jace didn't look up, but he felt it, a pressure on his chest, a hum in his bones. Like the planet was holding its breath as he approached the sky pillar. The tower wasn't built, had grown not from stone, but from something older than stone. A spiraling column of glass-like material that pulsed faintly with blue light. It stood alone on the plateau, surrounded by nothing but silence. Lyra walked a few steps ahead, her eyes scanning the structure as if seeing it for the first time. Even though her people had guarded this place for generations, she whispered as if afraid to be heard, "This is where the truth gets loud." Jace didn't reply. Every time he stepped closer to the pillar, something inside him stirred. Memories that weren't his. Voices without mouths, names without faces. They didn't hurt, but they didn't comfort either, as they reached the base of the pillar. The wind stopped, not slowed stopped. No sound, no movement, no breath. Lyra placed her palm on the smooth surface, and the pillar lit up like a rising dawn. The structure responded immediately, opening a narrow doorway in its side. She turned to Jace, her face pale in the soft light. "No one's been inside since the signal was last sent." "Hundreds of cycles ago, and that signal," she added, "ended the First War." Jace stepped through the entrance without hesitation. Inside, it was hollow, and yet endless. No walls, just open space filled with floating platforms and drifting lights. The air felt thick, not with dust, but with memory. Each light they passed flickered briefly, as if recognizing Jace the further they walked. The warmer it got, not heat from fire, but heat from presence, like walking through the pages of a book that knew it was being read again after too long. They reached a platform shaped like a hand, open and waiting. Jace stepped onto it, and the entire pillar responded. Lines of energy spread from the platform upward, forming symbols in the air, old, forgotten, but not dead. Lyra stood back, her voice barely more than a breath. "You're not just activating the beacon," she said. "You're waking up everything that still remembers." Jace closed his eyes, letting the energy speak. The platform pulled something from inside him, not blood, not power, but intention. And then the pillar asked him a question. Not in words, but in weight, in silence, in responsibility. Will you carry it? Jace didn't answer with his voice. He simply let the truth inside him rise, that he had already carried it. Since the moment he stepped between Lyra and death, the pillar responded instantly, sending out a pulse that shook the entire mountain. Lyra stumbled, grabbing the edge of the platform as the signal launched upward through the sky. A beam of blue light pierced the black clouds, and for a moment the sky itself opened across the stars. Something ancient heard it, not just ships, not just people, but old machines, old cities, old promises, and something else heard it too. Something darker, something buried on purpose. Jace opened his eyes, glowing bright now, no longer confused. I saw them, he said, his voice steady. The others. Lyra stepped beside him, her face tense. Who? The ones like me, he replied. The ones who hid when the war ended. The ones who waited for this signal. She swallowed hard. Then they're coming. He nodded slowly. Not just them, he said. Everyone is coming now. But, even as they stood there, the wind outside returned. Only this time, it wasn't soft. It howled with a voice made of metal and fury. The Hollow Army had found them again knowingly now. They weren't alone. Marching behind them were figures wrapped in dark armor glowing with corrupted light. And in the middle of that army rode a woman with Lyra's face twisted into something cruel. Her cousin had returned, and she wasn't just chasing them anymore. She was leading the end of peace itself. Jace didn't flinch. The pillar had shown him the path, and he would walk it, no matter what came next. The storm had begun, and he was ready. Asterisk. The first scream wasn't from a soldier. It was the mountain itself, cracking under the weight of everything that had been buried for too long. The sound rolled across the plateau like a roar from the planet's heart. Jace stood at the top of the sky pillar, eyes glowing, chest rising slowly, arms loose at his sides. Below him, the Hollow Army stretched across the rocks like a moving shadow. They didn't come alone. They came with machines older than the war itself. They came with broken oaths and stolen power. And they came with Lyra's cousin at the center, her armor soaked in darkness, her voice echoing through a speaker that shook the air. Surrender the human, she said, or watch everything around him burn. Lyra stepped beside Jace, her hands clenched. She doesn't understand, she whispered. She thinks this is still about bloodlines and power. Jace said nothing. His eyes were locked on the army below, but his focus was far beyond them. He was listening not to her voice, but to the hundreds of others that had awakened in his mind. Old voices, buried voices, voices that had waited for a spark to return. He could feel them now coming, ships slicing through space, footsteps on old stones, the ones who had heard the signal and those who had feared it. The Hollow Army moved forward slowly, one step at a time. Like a tide that couldn't be stopped, Jace closed his eyes for a second, and the ground beneath him glowed in answer. When he opened them, the platform he stood on lifted into the air, and the pillar shined like a second sun. The sky cracked open with thunder, and streaks of blue light fell like rain. They were not lightning. They were vessels, dropping from orbit like falling stars. From them stepped beings not seen in generations, some human, some alien, some forgotten by both. They wore symbols of peace, but carried weapons older than hate. Lyra gasped, tears in her eyes. They came, she said. The real ones, the old ones. Jace nodded slowly. They remember what the war cost, he said. They don't want to lose the galaxy again, below. The Hollow Army hesitated for the first time. Their programming stuttered, confused by the sudden return of those who were meant to be extinct. But Lyra's cousin didn't pause. She raised her arm and shouted, "Destroy them all." The first wave rushed forward, and the air filled with the sound of weapons and screaming. Metal, But Jace didn't draw a weapon. He stepped forward, his feet hovering above the ground. His body surrounded by threads of glowing energy. The vault had changed him. The pillar had marked him. And now the galaxy recognized him. He extended one hand, palm open, toward the enemy. The hollow soldiers froze mid-strike, trembling. Lyra watched in awe as blue light wrapped around each of them like memory made solid, and one by one, the corrupted machines fell to their knees, their darkness unraveling into dust. Only a few remained, those led by choice, not programming. Lyra's cousin stood among them. Defiant, shaking with rage. "You think light makes you strong." She hissed, "You're still just a man who got lucky." Jace stepped down from the floating platform, walking slowly toward her. "I didn't get lucky," he said. "I chose. I chose to protect someone I didn't know. I chose to risk my life for her, and I'll choose that again." Every time she charged at him, her blade made of red flame, but before it reached him, Lyra stood between them, not with a shield, but with a memory. She opened her hand, and from it came a single spark, something from her ancestors. Meant for peace, but twisted into silence. She gave it voice again, and her cousin dropped her weapon, her knees hitting the ground with a sound that echoed across the mountain. The battle ended not with a bang but with a silence too deep for words. The stars above shimmered, and the ground below calmed. Jace stood still, surrounded by warriors, who had once only existed in stories, and Lyra stood beside him, not as a girl needing protection, but as someone who had chosen to stand in the light. Later, when the fires were out and the last of the ships began to leave, Lyra found Jace sitting near the edge of the cliff, watching the sky. She sat beside him quietly, their shoulders touching. "Would you do it again?" she asked, her voice soft. He turned and smiled slightly. "Take a laser blast for you," he said. "Absolutely." She smiled too, but this time, she whispered, "I'd take one for you." They sat in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because sometimes the ending didn't need words, it just needed a choice, and he had made his asterisk.